Hey, welcome to the Touchlab YouTube channel. My name is Eric and I'm on the marketing team at Touchlab. You're about to watch a recording of our team coming together to chat and discuss the Kotlin 1.4 online event. This event is running for 4 days. Every day, we're coming together as a team to recap what happened on that day, share our thoughts, and ultimately talk about what this all means if you're a manager or a developer interested in adopting Kotlin Multiplatform Mobile or KMM at your organization. If there's a resource that we mentioned during the recordings, don't worry, the link to that resource will be found in the description. As always, we really appreciate you watching, and if you like what you see and are interested in Kotlin Multiplatform Mobile, please subscribe because we'll be sharing a lot more of these videos moving forward. Thanks again. All right, we're here to do day 2 recaps for the Kotlin 1.4 event. I've got the team with me here. We'll do introductions in a second. But just as a reminder, this Kotlin 1.4 event is in support of the release of Kotlin 1.4. Kotlin 1.4 is really focused on improving quality and performance of the language. Day 1 was filled with the keynote, which had a lot of great updates as it relates to Kotlin Multiplatform Mobile. We also managed to hear from Igor in terms of what the community is doing to support the development of Kotlin Multiplatform Mobile or KMM. So day 2 is really focused on library development. There's definitely some updates that matter to the Kotlin multi-platform community, and that's what we're going to focus on for this particular segment. Before we do that, if everyone can just kind of introduce themselves, I'll go first. I'm Eric, and I'm with the marketing team here at Touchlab. Russell, do you want to go?
Sure. I'm Russell. I'm a mobile developer here at Touchlab.
Justin?
I run all the projects and strategy.
Sam?
I'm the engineering manager at Touchlab.
Last but not least, Kevin.
I'm a partner, and I do a lot of multi-platform stuff, I guess is the best way to explain it.
So to kind of caveat, day 2 was about library development. These particular talks that we're producing here, these recaps are more so using our expertise as it relates to KMM to talk about the developments that are happening from this event. So while there is a lot of great developments that happened in day 2, we are going to focus this particular conversation around, from a KMM perspective, what were the things that stood out?
We do a lot of our own library work, obviously, and so seeing like what the JetBrains team has been up to and kind of hearing them talk about the stuff they've been focused on. Like the release of Kotlin X8 time, which like the release actually came out a month or so ago. I think it's probably like one of the most significant in that, like that's something that people have been looking for a while. So it's neat to kind of finally have something there to start playing with.
Yeah, we had seen that before, and it's one of the major gaps with people trying to adopt Kotlin multi-platform was the datetime implementation. And Kevin started to work on one, and what we heard in the talk was there are others, and we've looked at those as well. Clock, fluid time, island time. Kevin started working on his own. So I'd like to hear what Kevin has to say about
how do I feel?
Yeah.
Sure. I feel like there are a few months of my life that I'll never get back. I tried to take Java 8's time library and make it work multi-platform. I got to the point where, iOS was working, and then talked to the JetBrains people, and they were talking about working on a library, so it kind of stopped there. But Island Time actually had a very similar philosophy. But datetime, the libraries that the JetBrains is working on are really foundational libraries. Like datetime's a tough one. And datetime libraries are very difficult too. There are exceptions, obviously, JetTime, from the community, but then the engineer whose name I don't remember, apologies, who worked on that wound up designing or was heavily involved in the design of the Java time library. Yada, yada. Same thing with serialization, like obviously coroutines. These are all like really foundational things that, I wouldn't expect the community to necessarily work on very soon. The time library is good to have. Obviously, some of the missing stuff is around parsing and formatting. And that has to do with, to a large degree with it's not localization. Like this stuff is all being built simultaneously, or over time, not simultaneously, serially. But it was interesting watching today. I kind of, I haven't had a ton of time to play with the library, but it does make sense that, we can kind of, what we've been doing previously is making extensions and expect actuals or whatever to implement date time stuff. And I think it's reasonable to incorporate that library and then do your formatting platform specific, because it's going to be much more difficult to solve that across all of the available platforms. Whereas for us, it really only matters for Android and iOS, at least for what we're primarily focused on, right? So that's what I thought. I think it's neat.
Yeah, I found it really interesting kind of hearing them talk about some of the design trade-offs and stuff, like some of the things they do, like stuff like not having an explicit zone date time class and just saying keep track of them as separate elements is like not necessarily the choice I would have made, but I see why they did it. And it's going to be interesting to see how people respond to that kind of stuff.
See, that's where it's interesting. Like the reason I started doing the Java time thing was the Java world had multiple decades to complain about the original date time library and calendar. So I feel like those design decisions like had a whole lot of thought behind them. So not that the Kotlin decisions are wrong, but there was this urge to like have unambiguous things, statically typed things, and not have them be sort of weird or whatever. And then, but there's these other things that happen over in the Java time world that people have found very, very useful, right? So like we'll see how that plays out, whether or not that is introduced. Of course, if you look at the entirety of the Java time library, there's a bunch of stuff I totally would not expect. Like there's entirely non-Gregorian calendars, things like that. It gets complicated. So that's why I was more than happy to stop working on that library and allow someone else to spend all their time on it. It's one of the things when I are talking about libraries a lot, is I feel like there's a little bit of like a hot potato to see if you can get someone else to do the work. So just like if you find out someone else is working on it, you're like, encourage them to continue if they're doing a good job. Yeah, sort of like there's like other stuff happening in the apartments. I'm like muting.
They mentioned towards the end there the Timezone database as one of those things that is different between platforms, and they've elected not to try to solve yet, but potentially will be embedding it in the future. So it is interesting to see like the restrictions that are still going to be in place if you want to use this cross-platform.
Well, it's a tough one. Like that when I was doing the time zone, or I was doing the implementation, it was just for native mobile, and there is like kind of a common time zone library out there that they all kind of use, and you can usually they have different editions of it because they'll get updated with either fixes or whatever. So like I don't know, you kind of, I could see an argument where you're not going to need, like where this deviates is not the stuff you would normally do. It is much further in the past, or perhaps in locations that are not as heavily computed. You know what I mean? Like people aren't doing and noticing the problems very often. So there's like fixes that happen over time. But if you need absolute precision and like repeatable things across platforms, you'll need to do that. But I struggle to find a use case for that is super critical. I'm sure someone else may have that, but then you'll need to embed the Timezone database and be exact on your versions.
Yeah, and Sam bringing up the platform-specific issues that they need to deal with datetime. A lot of these talks, they weren't diving into the Kotlin multi-platform aspect, but it was throughout all of this. There was at least one slide on all of these where it talked about multi-platform, and they are continuing to look at that. When Kevin's talking about foundational libraries, they were talking about the standard lib, which you can't really get more foundational than that. And they were talking about there's exception processing on different platforms being handled in different ways. And as library developers, and Kevin, Russell, and Sam have all developed libraries at this point, what kinds of changes to the standard library in multi-platform realm are you thinking of?
Me, no, not a lot.
Yeah, and I think the one that we've saw some impact from recently that wasn't really a huge thing was them moving throws, like the throws annotation to the common standard library, like that simplified a tiny little bit of like there was that because it didn't exist in the standard lib.
Yeah,
most of it is kind of incremental. I think like the stuff that we've been impacted by for that.
Yeah, I think like we added array DQ to our concurrent collections thing. It's not that it's it's just we'll see over time. I don't know.
I think it's good to see at a high level that the standard library is moving towards common. I think these are increments of like recognizing common as the starting point, and JVM as customization, which I think is positive.
Yeah, I also like to Justin's point earlier of like most things we're not talking about the fact that these are multi-platform. Like, be cool that we're at a point where that can just be kind of implied.
I think it is. I mean, I think a lot of the stuff in standard lib, for obvious reasons, and you'll see this theme, and you saw it yesterday and today, like a lot of it is negotiations driven by use case. Like you have to come up with a good argument. Otherwise, everything's very conservative to be adding it to something that's going to have to be supported and like add weight to anything going forward. So it is like going back to what I was talking about yesterday, like rather than coming up with a great idea and throwing it into a pull request, like start a conversation, and it's going to be a negotiation because they're going to default to not adding something unless you can make a real good case for it. So that's what's kind of happening in the standard lib to some degree, but throws, for example, I think in retrospect, it'll look like a good idea to not add freeze because freeze is not really going to be super necessary, but we'll see.
From my perspective, all these incremental improvements are more important than how it sounds like coming from your mouths. You're deep in it, and then when I'm thinking of it from a project perspective, like any time the developers are spending on workarounds, on obstacles that they're running into, on configuration issues, like when they're talking about serialization becoming more flexible and that you can deal with different types of data. Now, you used to have to work around that, or with the like coroutines updates. We've been through all the issues around multi-platform coroutines isn't ready yet. PlanGrid creates a workaround to allow this to happen. Like all these things, they add up. And so seeing those incremental improvements from my perspective is like really important.
Well, I meant more about standard lib, like the outside library stuff is really great, really great. It's real hard to. I think the issue is going to be with multi-platform stuff like with the data library, is that they're not going to release just for native mobile. They're going to release for JVM, JS, native across like all reasonable implementations, and reluctant to not support something. So it is taking more time. Like I assume why there's not a lot of localization yet, because it's extraordinarily difficult to get that into every situation. So no, it's great to see. I'm like, that one's not incremental. That's like huge. What's been great to watch over the last couple of years, and it was part of the libraries talk I gave before too. We had the Droidcon app, and we had a ton of expect actuals because it was like a whole bunch of features that like weren't supported anywhere, and it was over time. It was really cool to like be able to pull something out because now there's a library that does it. And the reason why, I don't really spend a lot of time talking about expect actual when introducing multi-platform to somebody at first is because in the downstream app, because the library ecosystem's improved, like you tend not to need that so much, but
I think that's a good segue for like folks that are being introduced to this for the first time. Tomorrow we're anticipating, well, we know that it's going to be heavily focused on multi-platform and especially mobile. For folks, we through our partnership with JetBrains, we've kind of seen what the themes are going to be for tomorrow. In a roundtable fashion, how do you think people are going to react to tomorrow's kind of focus on the multi-platform side of the Kotlin language?
I've kind of seen all of the KMM announcements that have come with 1.4 as like there's really new, and there's some stuff that's like this is a stabilization mile, more people's attention. Like that's some new stuff that's going to enable some new functionality in the IDE. But really, most of it is about like kind of get people's attention and get people who were kind of waiting in the wings to try this stuff out.
Yeah, I agree with that. We saw that happen with the KMM announcement and the alpha announcement in the webpage that came up. Lots of questions around what does this mean to me? How does this change the readiness of it? So I'm glad to see the title of Katrina's talk is "It's Time for Kotlin Multiplatform Mobile." It's like JetBrains is saying right out there, like you can start using it, and I can't wait for her talk.
Yeah, I had a slide in a talk from like early 2019 where I was like, I think mobile is the killer app for multi-platform, and it's nice to like see that as a thing officially now.
I don't know. I hope they love it. I don't know. I'm excited for tomorrow. Today was definitely like, it was trying to catch the videos in between everything else going on because we are actively shipping KMM apps.
It's definitely time for Kotlin Multiplatform Mobile at Touchlab for sure.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think we'll pause there. This was for folks who are kind of watching, just us getting together each day to look at what was announced and ultimately share what the implications are from a Kotlin multi-platform perspective. So tomorrow, action-packed day. There's going to be talks all day around this particular subject. So we'll be producing another recap around day 3. But in the meantime, thanks for listening. This has been another segment of Touchlab Share. And thanks, Russell, Justin, Sam, and Kevin. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks everyone for listening.
All right. Thanks. Bye.